Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast, your go-to source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development. We hope you tune in often for all things people management, organizational development and change, organizational leadership, and social impact related. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI podcast episode, I talk with Vivian Blade about the difference in being an influencer or being an influential leader. Vivian Blade, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Hi, John. Great to be with you. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to be chatting with you today. We've been preparing for this for a while now. And today we're going to be talking about the difference in being an influencer versus being an influential leader. We'll dissect that, pull that apart, and try to better understand what we can really do to make sure that we are having the best, most meaningful impact that we can possibly have as a leader. As we get started, I wanted to share Vivian's bio with everybody. Recognized as one of Engagedly's top 100 global HR influencers in 2021, Vivian Blade is a sought-after leadership expert and thought leader. She works with the world's top brands, equipping leaders with the resilience that inspires them to recover quickly in the face of ongoing disruption and thrive in spite of insurmountable odds. Her impact is felt as a frequent speaker for association conferences and in delivering transformative leadership development programs, executive coaching, and consulting for corporations. What a wonderful background. It's a pleasure to have you. Anything else you would like to share with listeners by way of your background before we launch on into the conversation?
I would just say that a lot of my corporate career experience, having worked for GE and Humana, top Fortune company, had me a lot of leadership experience, and the work I do today is based a lot on that those years of experience that I've had.
Yeah. Thank you for that background and context. And I think with all of the richness of experience that you've had, which of course will include the good, the bad, and the ugly, and at times missteps, and you've seen good examples and bad examples, and I'm sure you've had times where you have let out in good ways and less effective ways. All of that, informs the way we move forward, and that's super important and super helpful. As we get started, perhaps you can share with us your perspective on why influence is so important for leaders today in this current world of work.
John, that's such an important question. And as you think about that, as we really consider how things have changed in our environment over the past couple of years, and then even going before the pandemic, well before that, the shift in the generations in the workplace and what employees expect in their workplace, what they expect from leaders has dynamically changed for us. So, I recall as I started my career, there was a very different style of leadership, more directive style of leadership, telling us, what to do, when to be there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. We were on all the time. You worked more than your 40 hours. That was expected of you. Even if
it was kind of a butts and seats.
Yeah.
Walk around, monitor people, make sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing. And like you said, directive, I think is a good way to describe that. Yeah.
Right. And now we find that professionals expect so much more of a participative or coaching style of leadership from the people that they work for. And influence then becomes a critical soft skill in order to be able to lead that way. So as leaders, we've got to shift our mindset. We've got to be ready for the time that we're in and the time ahead. And if we really want to retain employees and create workplaces that I say are a place where people want to work and they feel valued, then we've got to lead differently. We've got to be leaders who are resilient in how we influence.
Yeah, so let's talk about that and pull that apart a bit. I know in your books and your workshops, you talk about the difference in being an influencer versus actually being influential. What do you mean by that? What's the difference? Why does it matter? And then we'll start to dive into like what we can really do to have more impact.
Sure. So when I think about an influencer, and many of us can think about different examples that we've been through in our personal lives, and in many instances, I'm going to use sort of a general analogy here to help us get a feel for what I mean by being an influencer. So, you've been to a car lot, you've been to a store, any retail store. I'm not picking on retail, but, lots of different experiences that we've had where we have felt like we have been manipulated to some degree, or that someone is trying to push their agenda on us. And that doesn't feel good. That feels uncomfortable. So that's the extreme of being an influencer. But there are times when we all are influencers. And here's what I mean by that. There are tactics. We've got these psychologists and these experts in persuasion and influence tactics and approaches. Cialdini is one of those. Robert Cialdini, Claudio Fesser is another one. You can read their works. And they talk about these effective influence strategies that all of us may use sometimes, where we are trying to use our authority potentially, or we're making our case. We're using likability. We are using these different approaches. And there are times when we all will do that in an ethical way. We are influential, and that is different because we want to think about the values and how we live and how we engage and how we interact with other people. The character that we have, that foundation of relationships that gives us more to lean on when we need to pull out an influence tactic or an approach, when we need a decision made or we need to persuade someone that, yeah, this is a good directive. I need you to go along with me. Will they trust us? What do they know about us? What equity do we have in that relationship or from other people that we may know that help give us the credibility to be influential in those circumstances rather
Yeah.
than depend on influence tactics at a given point in time?
Yeah, and let's drill in on that for just a minute, because I think that's hugely important. That's probably really the foundation to all of this, right? So there is a big difference between these influence tactics, like manipulative tactics, using carrot and stick, fear-based leadership, all of these types of things. You can influence people and you can get them to do things and fall in line, but none of those elements have at the foundation trust, mutual accountability, and responsibility to each other. None of those have this component of relational equity and making sure that we have this shared expectation of supporting each other. And there's necessarily a disconnect in that style when you're using those types of tactics. And can you move the needle and can you get people to do stuff and to comply? Yes. Will you get people to trust you and be committed to the cause and to go above and beyond? Probably not. You might for some, because many people are just big-hearted and they're willing to do their all regardless of the situation. But by and large, you're not going to have sustainable, committed effort from people when that's the case. And so moving away from that and not just relying on manipulation, Machiavelli-esque types of approaches and shrewdness and political maneuvering, all of those sorts of things, those are realities in every organization, and there are leaders that play those games. But most people appreciate openness, transparency. They appreciate just being dealt with in a straight way, right?
Yes.
And not playing games with them. And when you do that, you build your credibility, you build your reputation, you build trust with those around you, which is a currency you build over time, so that when
That's
the time
right.
comes that you have to lean on people, you need their support for some initiative or some big project or whatever, that people are going to be more willing to step up to the plate
Right.
without coercion, right?
Right. That's absolutely right. And that's when we can use those tactics ethically when we've got that foundation of trust. All those things that you described, John, are absolutely right on. Right on. Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about 5 key principles for building influence that you talk about in your book. What are those principles, and what are some specific things that leaders can do, like the actions they can take to really scale their influence and have greater impact as they're working with their teams and with their organizations?
Yeah, there's a mantra that I like to use that is influence is more about how you live than what you do. Influence is more about how you live than what you do. And so therefore these principles also connects to the servant leadership, all of the things that we're talking about here. But there are 5 key principles for how we become more influential. And I use this SCALE acronym as a framework because we can scale or elevate our influence for greater impact. And the SCALE framework is the S is for social capital. I'll tell you what the framework is, and then I'll come back and briefly describe some of these things, and then we can talk about what some of those strategies are. So the S is for social capital. The C is for courage. A is for our authenticity. The L is for leaning in with passion. And the E is engaging a diverse and inclusive workplace community. All of those are critically important for us to build that foundation of influence. So within those, let's talk about a few ways that you can build your influence. I'm going to give you 3, out of those 5 with the time that we have together today. And feel free, John, to ask any other questions. We can dive into these deeper as you would like. But let's start with the S, the social capital. And as you were describing the relationship building, the trust that you create over time, we do that by making sure that we are investing in those relationships with other people. We're making a difference. We are selflessly adding value to others. We are doing things without an expectation for a return of anything, knowing that karma, right, good will come back to you eventually, but that's not our intention, that we do good for good. I was on another podcast interview, and we were talking about how sometimes people say, well, that's not my job. I'm not going to help over here because that's not my job. But when we have at our heart the purpose, the mission of our organization, wanting to do our best and serve customers with everything that we have to give, then it's not individualistic. It's not all about my particular department, my goal, but it's about the collective effort that we put together that helps us to make the extraordinary organizations that we are, and the service that we can deliver to customers makes them want to be part of and do business with us and be part of our brands. So, that's social capital. And that's the first action I want to give you today, is to selflessly add value. The C for courage helps us to embrace the challenge that we sometimes face. And sometimes it's hard to do things differently or stand up differently when others around us are pressuring us maybe to conform to a culture that we're in. So I encourage you to really challenge your culture. Look at where you are. How do people influence in your organization? Is it positive? Is it constructive? Or are there more negative influences where you have people who are leaving because of the poor leadership? So I encourage you to challenge yourself, challenge your culture, be willing to speak up if things are not right, and to do the right thing in your leadership.
I'm excited to announce the publication of my new book from HCI Press, Bluer Than Indigo Leadership: The Journey of Becoming a Truly Remarkable Leader. Early in my adult life, I learned about an Asian proverb that translates as bluer than indigo. If you think about the color indigo, it is a brilliant, deep, and vibrant blue, what some would call the bluest of blues. To have something that is bluer than indigo is rare and truly remarkable. Contrary to popular myth, there is no one-size-fits-all or cookie-cutter approach to effective leadership. There's no silver bullet, no secret sauce, no go-to model that will solve all of our problems. The truth is, great leaders have all had their unique strengths and flaws, and have all had to discover and then pave their own distinctive path in their life's journey to fulfill their leadership potential. Bluer Than Indigo Leadership will help you discover your own path and explore those ordinary, everyday actions that will help you respond to an uncertain future and produce extraordinary results for individuals, teams, and organizations. That can be really difficult. You know, we all want, I think, to do right by others, and we all want to be courageous. But where the rubber meets the road, and we have to make a choice whether to push back up the hierarchy, or we have to decide to stay silent, or to take a passive aggressive approach, or whatever the range of choices are when we see something that we feel is not right or needs to be changed, adjusted, or fixed. Ultimately, as we have that social capital, as you mentioned, as we built that and filled that well over time, so we have a bigger bank of capital, then that gives us a chance, I think, to have that influence when the difficult times come, when the challenging issues arise, when we have those moral and ethical dilemmas that we need to face, and in acknowledging and calling out problems in a way where people know you have the best interests of everyone at heart. Right. It's a hard thing to call someone out, especially if they're a good friend or colleague, because people tend to get defensive very quickly, even regardless of your intentions. Even if you have no intention of specifically calling them out, if you point out a problem or an error or something that needs to be adjusted or fixed, people often will take that very personally. And so it really can strain relationships. And unless you have that trust and that social capital in place in the beginning, it doesn't matter how much courage you have, because you're not going to be terribly influential or impactful. And frankly, if you don't have that social capital, most people won't have the courage to do it in the first place.
That's right. That's right. And you have to have that base, that social capital in place so that you can do that. You also have to role model. Are you just pointing other people out? And that's why I encourage you to check yourself first, turn the mirror on yourself first. And are you role modeling the type of behavior you want to see? And that we try to shift our nations to create better workplaces. So good. So I appreciate your emphasis on that. The other area that I want to touch on one other, then I want to dive into the E, but authenticity is another one that's really important. And you had a recent guest that talked a lot about authenticity. And so I won't spend a lot of time there. I encourage people to go back and listen to that particular interview that you did. But I want to encourage people on authenticity to learn to be adaptable and not artificial. So learn to be adaptable, not artificial. So I'm just gonna put a cross the T and dot the I on the other interview on that.
And can I just add to that? Yeah. I like the way you frame that, because authenticity doesn't mean we have to stay consistent over time. We find ourselves in different circumstances and different contexts. And frankly, our understanding of the world around us changes over time. And so being adaptable is super important. I need to be authentic to myself. I need to be true to myself, my values. And if I'm not, that shows up very quickly when I'm trying to lead my team and people don't want to follow those who aren't being authentic. But that doesn't mean I have to hold to the same narrative or the same opinion and view of things. And in fact, great leaders are always learning. They're always trying to gather new information, and they're allowing themselves to be influenced by the data, by the influence that's out there. And that's the mark of a great leader. So being adaptive, I think, is super important.
Yes. And we are always learning and growing, and we should allow that to help us to grow personally and adapt our style, our character. Our values are influenced by those things as we go through different experiences, as we lead in different ways, as those elements inform us. And I'm going to touch on the L, leaning in with passion, then, Jonathan, because you really kind of touched on that with all the information and insight and being intentional about being aware of what's going on around us and learning from that. Because with leaning in with passion, I encourage people to grow your expertise, to always be a learner, a lifelong learner, learn and grow. Don't feel like you have to be the one who knows everything, or in a politically sensitive environment where you feel like you have to show up as competent. No, you can still be competent, but you're going to be more competent as you continue to develop and grow and learn and seek opportunities to read these podcast interviews, like the discussion we're having today. Being a part of industry associations and being active in that all help you to grow, even outside of your regular role in organization, where you are volunteering in your community for boards and giving back, and we grow and develop that way as well. So you hit right on that. So I had to give another nugget there for everyone on that one. So that's the L. And let's look at the E in the scale framework, which is engaging a diverse and inclusive workplace community. And, inclusion and diversity and equity is such a hot topic now, but I encourage you to not let it just die with the time as the buzz begins to wane, but the importance of including and valuing everyone in your workplace. There's so much talent, and people are making decisions to leave organizations because they don't feel engaged or included. So I encourage you to make sure that you are being intentional about changing your culture and accepting, receiving, including, involving people. And how do we do that? So my specific action for you on this one is to unleash community influence. If we want to be more influential as leaders, then we've got to extend that influence to other people. We're not the sage on the stage or the director of everything all the time. We've got to give some empowerment to the people who are on our team. They have to have some accountability. Leverage that, give them that accountability. Let other people know that you've got experts, you've got people that you trust and depend on, and who can take good care of what needs to be done, how they need to represent your team in the broader organization. So unleash that community influence. Coach your team members so that they are equipped to be able to engage and lead, even if they are not leaders by title. Let them know and coach them in being leaders in their role. So I encourage you to just make sure that you are not keeping it all to yourself or think that you have to, but that you can share that influence, and that will give you even greater influence.
Yeah, and it really does build on itself, right? The more of these different aspects that you talked about in the scale model that you develop over time, the more power and influence you're going to have. uh, to make a positive impact on those around you and to lead a successful team, a successful organization. That's what we all want. Last thing I want to touch on before we close today is really what the influential leader can do in the current context that we find ourselves in. We're in the middle of this great resignation. It's a tight labor market. Organizations are having a really hard time filling open positions. How, attracting and retaining really good people is really tough. So what can we do, in developing our own influence as leaders to help solve this challenge we're facing with the great resignation?
We have to start with how do we retain employees, because that's going to be our least costly, right? If we can keep the people that we have, it costs a lot more to have to recruit and train and orient new employees. So let's first focus on what can we do to make sure that we are retaining the employees that work for us today. And I would say we have to lead differently. If we really think about these scale principles that I've talked about today and how that can create a different culture. And I want you to keep in mind this goal that I state, that we want to create workplaces where people want to work and feel valued. You have to ask yourself, do we have that kind of work environment? Are you listening to your employees? Are you pulsing what the employee experience is? And are you doing something about what you hear? Are you challenging your leadership competencies? Are you challenging the values? Are you living the values that you say are so important for your organization? How are they being modeled? And then are you developing your leaders to be able to model those values, to be able to lead differently, to be able to lead in this different environment that we're in with a different set of expectations that professionals have for their workplaces and the people that they work for? So what are you doing around leadership development, around ongoing development, around accountability? So those are some of the key areas that I think, first of all, we have to address. And then we know that there's so much back and forth with people today about who do you work for, what's it like to work for them, and we've got all of these platforms now, Glassdoor, for example, where people can get firsthand information from people who work for you about what their experience is. So what are you doing to, one, again, understand what your reputation is as an employer, and taking care of the people who are inside so that you are, when those recommendations come, you're getting positive recommendations. And then the other thing I would add to that is back on the E, engaging a diverse and inclusive workplace community. What are you doing to really be engaging? What are you doing to be diverse? What are you doing to truly be inclusive? Because people can feel it, they know it stands out in your brand. And if you do not have intention, really true intention behind the diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts that you are putting forth today, and you're not thinking about them in terms of true culture change for your organization and the way we work for forever, then you don't have a sustainable model. What you're doing will not sustain your workplace, and you're going to continue to have the revolving door. So you've got to be serious about it. You've got to do diversity, equity, and inclusion from the highest levels and model that. I've talked about modeling behavior so much today, but truly modeling that with the greatest intention is critical.
Yeah, absolutely. Very well said, Vivian. It has been a pleasure. I note the time and we're about out of time for today, but before we close, I wanted to give you a chance to share with listeners how they can get connected with you, find out more about your work, your books, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
All right, absolutely. My website is vivianblade.com, vivianblade.com. You'll find tons of information there. But if you also want to dive in more on this topic of being an influential leader, then I encourage you to also visit the website influencewithscale.com, influencewithscale.com. You can find Influence and Talent Development, which is the book, on Amazon. It's there. This is a book that's been published by the Association for Talent Development as part of a soft skills series. And they thought influence was such an important part of that, that they had me author this book for this series. So you can find more information about that. I'd also encourage you, if you're interested in how to be more resilient leader, resilient, influential leader, resilienceready.today is another website where there are tons of resources and information. And Resilience Ready, the Leader's Guide to Thriving Through Unrelenting Crises, is that book that I introduced earlier this year. So you can find that there.
Thank you so much, Vivian. It has been a pleasure. I encourage listeners to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Vivian can do for you, check out her books. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership. Ordinary, everyday actions that produce extraordinary results. Consider how the nature of work has shifted over the past 50 years. With increased globalization, rapid technological advancement, and the shift in economic composition, the average job of today looks very different than the average job of 50 years ago. What will the jobs and organizations of tomorrow look like? Moreover, what does this all mean for organizational leaders? What are the core competencies and capabilities of organizations and their leadership that are prepared for continued disruption and geopolitical and socioeconomic shifts? Regardless of what the future holds, increasingly, leaders need to be socially minded, data-driven, decisive, champions of talent, and disruptors of the traditional notions of leadership, teams, organizations, and work. The alchemy of truly remarkable leadership will help you to explore your own leadership competencies and capabilities and consider ways to apply and implement them into your workplace and personal life. Check out Human Capital Innovations magazine, Human Capital Leadership. Human Capital Leadership is a free, interactive e-magazine with the mission to help individuals, leaders, and organizations find innovative approaches to maximize their human capital potential. We publish issues quarterly in August, November, February, and May. Take a look at the latest issue and let us know what you think. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.